right now we've got this model. It was the arcane kind of coloration model. And I'm going to take the face and the hair and make an lod0 out of it so that we can bake it and turn it into something that we can render and animate very easily. I want to point out the reasons why we do this. So it doesn't really matter what game engine you're using, or if you're doing this in film, or if you're like maybe whatever reason you're creating an animation for with these models. It's very important that you reduce the poly count in a reasonable way so that you can animate it, because the poly count is way too high on these detailed objects. It's lovely in ZBrush, but we can't really animate it and do a lot else with it. So we have to kind of get it into a lower poly count. The reason why we do that is so that it is fast to animate. You can iterate quickly. You can affect texture quickly. And honestly, the fast iteration is going to improve your quality. So I know, like, at first, kind of with CG, you think like, all right, more polygons, more things, more textures, higher quality. But what I've found is if you're streamlined, if you're efficient, it's a lot easier to update and you can have more iteration. And more iteration means you can kind of get closer to a higher quality bar. So it's the reasons why we make efficient systems for rendering, efficient systems for texturing, and efficient systems for modeling. So in this one, I'm going to reduce the polys of the hair, but I also need it to flow in a way that could be animatable. I also want, with the hair, to be able to create something called anastropy. Anastropy is something that I haven't talked about yet, but it is when the tubes of your hair will align in a certain way with the lighting, so it to create a very specific shape of the specular highlight. And anastropy, I'll write that down to kind of make that a little clear. Anastropy is in a bunch of shaders. It's in Arnold, it's in Unreal. I'm sure it's in what's it called, the Blender, and then I'm also you're going to find it in other rendering packages. But basically, what anastropy does is it stretches out a highlight. So I can throw an object on with an anastropy shader. We can just use AI standard surface. If there's a light on it, this will be visible. Make sure there's a light over here. So if you throw a normal Arnold surface, AI standard surface on an object, you get a round highlight on a sphere. But say you wanted it to feel like hair, anastropy is an option in the specular highlights. And if we crank that up, you'll notice it starts to stretch out the specular highlight. And what's going on there is it's using your UVs of this sphere and it's stretching it out, the highlight based off of those UVs. And why it's doing that? It's faking the fact that hair is a bunch of little tubes. So if we throw that same shader without anastropy on this object here, you can see a tube has a long stretched out highlight. Sure, but if it's bent and it's and there's a whole bunch of them, it starts to change the nature of highlights, and it's a very kind of interesting system that happens here. So let me get this tube with a whole bunch of subdivisions going up the axis, so I can kind of fake hair. Yeah, hopefully we don't crash, because I know the Arnold real-time render can sometimes cause issues, but we are doing pretty well with this low resolution model. So you notice the stretched out highlight of a cylinder. That is a part of anisotropy, but that's not what hair is. Hair isn't stretched out vertically. It's actually stretched out horizontally. And the reason is it's a bunch of cylinders that are bent. So if we were to put a deformer on this hair, I'm going to just bend it. And this is just kind of typical modeling thing where you create a curve using a bend. I'm going to rotate it so that the curve is facing in a way that we can see the highlight. You can see the highlight there. It just looks like, a torus with a highlight, but hair is a bunch of tubes. And if we have a whole bunch of tubes, you notice the highlight starts to stretch out along the tubes. And it does this thing where it rolls up and down and it stretches out. So hair is using this system. If you're actually rendering every little hair strand, it will use this system to create shine. We don't always have the processing power to render every hair strand. So what we do is we use anisotropy in the shader, which stretches out the specular highlight and makes it feel like there are a bunch of tubes going up and down. The thing about it is that's very important to note is that it is based off of the UVs. So you can rotate the UVs and it will rotate the anisotropic highlight. So this is going to, here, I'm rotating the UVs here. Hi, Suzanne, I'm glad you're back. If you rotate the UVs here, no, rotate. You'll notice that anisotropy rotates as well. So with that being said, whether you're using hair cards or like a sculpted hair like this object, you have to align the UVs with the flow that you want the hair to actually be doing. So this is if you're doing kind of video game hair where you want the highlight to shine across the hair. That is going to use anisotropy. The other thing I want to talk about today, which is really important for faces, for human faces and animal faces as well, is concentric circles. Not only is it important for faces, but it is also important for just about every other type of model, whether it's you're making a high res or low res cage and you want to make it into a high res. Concentric circles around extrusions is very useful. You see that looks pretty good, and it's not a circle, it's a square, but when you smooth it, it becomes a circle. If I remove that, it does kind of soften these edges and make sometimes it causes some issues with polys, especially if there's any movement or distortion. You'll get kind of funky distortion. So there's always reasons to have concentric circles around extrusions. Concentric circles around a hole is also helpful. If I just extrude in without too many concentric circles, it pushes it out. If the poly flow is too triangular, or like there's a specific triangle rather than a concentric circle, it usually causes some ugliness in the modeling when you're going from low res to high res. And then the other thing is concentric circles will always create kind of a cleaner change of plane. So you have a flat plane to a hole or a flat plane to an extrusion. You need concentric circles for a couple of reasons. One, for high res modeling, it helps to change the plane, and it makes sure there's like a crisp edge around the plane. If I added another concentric circle on the inside, it'd be even sharper, even crisper, and it ends up looking pretty good for a square turning into a circle. Still kind of polygonal, but if you added a few more polys, this would all make sense. The other one is for UVing. because when I want to break or want to UV this uh, um, hole is definitely going to be need to be UV'd separately from this. There's just no way you can make these two UVs line up very easily. And so if you don't have these concentric circles and you are UVing, there is often a lot of issues around edges as well. So concentric circles are important for UVing, for normals, and then for faces and for animation. It's also very important because the way that the face distorts, it's going to distort similar to the way the muscles are. Like eyes go down, mouth pulls out, pulls up. And this distortion ends up looking really ugly if you have triangles around these edges. So it's really important to create concentric circles around eyes and around mouth. And we even do concentric circles around the nose because it's helpful to have the planar change there. So I'm going to draw in green right here, kind of what I'm talking about. So first you're going to have a concentric circle around the actual very kind of opening of the mouth. You will have like a circle like this, but it'll be so tight and the polys will line up so that it really just seems like a flat edge, but it will be two edges that are just kind of right on top of each other. The poly should all be right on top of each other. Then there should be a concentric circle around the outer layer of the lips, kind of like this. And then there should be a big concentric circle going all the way around the mouth, like this, where it's actually as big as you can get, as far out as you can get, and then you will have concentric circles inside these, but you want to start with this concept when you're making your lod0 because it's very complicated. lod0 is very complicated as far as lots and lots of polys. So we want to understand our structure from a really simplistic way. So the same with the eye, concentric circle going around the crest of the eyelid. It's very important to catch that crest because of the corner of the eyelid is sharp, and so we want that crest to touch the eyelid exactly. Then another one around the corners of the eyelid, and then a big one around the entire eye, all the areas that you would think that the muscles would be pulling up and distorting, because like the eyebrow, the lower part of the lid will kind of move around and move down, sometimes pulls, but there's all kinds of reasons. It's just nice to have a big concentric circle around the eyelid. Then usually you want a concentric circle around the nose, just to isolate the nose, and a concentric circle around the ear to isolate the ear. And this is the same thing I was kind of demonstrating here. Anytime you have a plane change, it's always nice to have a concentric circle around that plane change for UV, and then for just the normals, just good kind of understanding of how to create nice normals. Now, the other thing you might have heard me just talking about was how the muscles pull in a direction. In the eyes, they'll pull up here, open and close, but then the eyebrows will pull up the forehead. So we also have to think about the ways that the face distorts and how it pulls and how it's going to compress. So I like to have not only concentric circles, but clean kind of grid pattern on the top of the forehead so that when you are pulling up on your brow, this compresses nicely. Quads are going to compress really nicely. The mouth will have a cheek area here, which you can almost kind of create a bigger concentric circle, but there will be kind of a limit because of the nose, and sometimes there's like complications with the triangles around the nose. And then there's the area around the cheek here that has issues because it's not exactly easy to create a concentric circle that meets with another concentric circle. So the transition usually requires a little thought. But then you want the polys to flow in the direction that the muscles are going to pull. So you can think of the mouth opening and closing, one, but also the smile. The smile is going to pull up this way. You also want to make sure there's enough polys around the cheek to have inflated cheeks if you need them. And then the cheekbone here, it's good to have enough polys to really show the plane changes of the cheekbones. Now, this is not an extrusion or a hole, so it's okay to put some triangles here and there on that kind of area, but we mainly are trying to create kind of a nice flow going from the mouth into the cheeks, from the eyes into the cheeks, and then if we can connect that flow, it makes everything a lot easier. So eventually you fill the entire model with enough lines that there is no polygonal shapes in the distance that you are looking at the model. And that is going to make it look good from every angle, how you render it. If you're dealing with a really low res game, you might have to reduce the amount of polys, but usually those are from a distance greater than super close, so you can get away with having lower amount of polys at a distance. But my general guideline for polys is if you can see them, we need more. And if you can see them from the camera view that you're rendering it, we're going to need more. If you can't see any polys, if everything feels smooth and when you're not seeing any kind of staggered or chiseled area that shouldn't be there, like this roundness of the cheek, the roundness of the forehead, that should all be round and it shouldn't feel too chiseled in certain areas. That's why even if there's not a lot of detail around the forehead, it's nice to put enough polys in there so that you get every flowing shape totally represented by the polys. Because even if there's nothing really going on around the eyebrow, there is form and it changes shape here. And if your polys are too low, it'll be obvious. So it's nice to have enough polys to have rounded shapes around forms. That being said, it's all about the camera view. What the distance is that you're rendering, that's when it's going to matter. Okay, so I just wanted to go over that. We'll get back to that in a second. The other thing I wanted to show with the hair was how to create some striation of hair, the hair color, where there is a little bit more interest than just a flat color. And I'll do that by using like the standard brush with color and then turning on one of these alphas with multiple streaks in it. These streaks can do a good job of simulating hair. If I select the hair, nope, there. So if I use these streaks alpha brush with my standard brush and maybe turn on freehand, you can see I can get some streaks right away, but this is not quite cool enough. But basically, I want to bring down the intensity just a little bit and kind of do it from a perspective where maybe you don't see every streak going all the way through. Pretty hard to see that unless you have a really high detail camera. So we don't worry about every little line, but what we try to do is kind of focus on the flow of the hair and create the streaks in that direction. Gets us an understanding of the flow. And the way that I do hair, I usually like whether I'm doing it for a hair card or sculpted hair, it's the same system. It's just streaks, some sort of brush. If I'm doing hair cards in Photoshop, there's a way that I like to paint them that is pretty much the same. If it's cat fur or fur I will use this method just a little bit modified, but basically, if you've got a hair card, it's great to start with black, figure out where your hair card is going to be, like just going to draw an outline of, where what the hair card will look like. They usually have these kind of teardrop shapes where the hair kind of comes together, and then the top is a little wider where it comes together. But hair will do this thing where it goes out and then it kind of comes back in. It does that because of static electricity. It likes to cling to itself. So it kind of goes out and comes back in. So if I'm going to paint a hair card, yeah, I usually figure out where it's going to be. There's usually one big one, one long one, and then short ones for kind of the sideburn hair and little tufts and stuff. So I'll do something like this. I'll think about the UVs going up and down so that the anisotropic will go left and right. And then I'll use a brush that I can create in Photoshop very easily just by making a um, little image with kind of a few dots, very similar to the ZBrush image. Just a few dots, sometimes kind of staggered so that they're not totally uniform. It does help getting things a little more organic. But if you define a brush preset, then you've got a brush like this. I usually bring up the brush settings and make sure the spacing's very, very low so it's streakier. And then I like to do shape dynamics with the tablet, turn on size and turn on pen pressure so that it goes in and out. And this helps with what I was talking about as far as hair isn't just parallel lines. It does not look like this, or let's see, use the mouse to explain that. Doesn't look like this. It looks like this, where it kind of gets bigger and then smaller. So small, big, and then small again. So if I'm going to draw hair cards, there's kind of a quick way that I do it with basically starting with black, understanding my area that they're going to be in, and then I'll use the color of the hair. Like say, blue is this girl's hair, but this hair card, we could make it kind of reddish hair. And what I do is I start really, really low intensity and just kind of try to build it up. And then I might go over it a few times with kind of darkness and light to try to get it right, because it doesn't always look right away. Looks kind of funky, but if I'm paying attention to it, I can kind of streak it so that it starts to feel like hair. Always good to get some sort of reference for hair. We can just look up red hair and yeah, something like that. This kind of reference is always nice to have. And then you can see that there's some areas that blow out on camera that might be a little too bright, but this where it's dark and then there where it's bright, this is what I want to do. So I'll grab some colors from there and kind of create this the dark hair first. Just make sure I'm kind of thinking about the strands and the flow of them, the directional flow. Maybe like I'll clean up the bottoms a little bit. I'm definitely doing this on a separate layer because I can use this as an alpha. This is going to be very helpful later on, but now I can get a brighter color and start creating kind of the highlights. And even though, the lighting will do a lot of highlights for us, hair always looks better when you bake a little bit of the highlight in, because I'll do this kind of thing where it's like there's just kind of a highlight, and then I feel like it might be a little too consistent. And what I'll do is dim it down a little and bring it down to a darker, and then I'll use the Dodge brush to kind of create some highlights, making sure the range is set to highlight. And that way I can get highlights. Usually the highlights kind of show up on the top area like this, and then they get a little dimmer as you go down. And then at the root, it's usually pretty dark because of shadowing around the root. So the root itself might end up being a little darker. And if I'm liking the overall hair transparency here, I can lock it and then continue to adjust the coloration. Like I want to get a little darker hair at the root, so I'm locking the overall transparency that I have, and now I'm just kind of add some more darkness up here, and then I'll bring this kind of medium highlight in here on in this area. And eventually it's like I'm kind of mostly happy with the strands, and then it's just about detailing so that we're not looking a little weird. Certain areas will look a little weird if like the brush wasn't kind of working great, and I can go in and detail this very subtly. But you notice I'm not thinking about every hair, I'm more thinking about the streak and the flow of it. So this is what I like to do for hair cards. The reason why I'm using this method is it gives me total control. I don't have to worry about the technical aspects of baking hair. I can very easily control it because I'm painting it. It's not a technical thing. I'm doing it very clearly as a an artistic thing. I'm looking at the highlights and trying to make it feel like the photo. Then there's even some white that shows up, some like desaturation. Just there tends to be kind of almost two different highlights in here. There's like the red highlight where the color is just brighter, and then there's the specular kind of brighter or less saturated highlight. So sometimes I'll go in with a less saturated highlight, and we can even create a new layer. You Control Alt G, this locks it to the layer underneath it. So whatever I'm doing, it doesn't come off of it. And then we can kind of just gently nudge up certain areas with a little less saturation. So this is how I like to create the hair cards. As far as applications, there's the way that we apply hair. It has to do with the way hair grows. It grows from like a cowlick in the center back, and I think about the parting of the hair, and I want to attach initially the roots to that part. So this is how I get it started. I want to make sure a couple of things that, and if it's too transparent, this doesn't actually work out too well for most video game engines. You usually need it to be a little sharper. So what I'll do is like this area where it's just a little transparent, we might pop that a little better so that it's just a little sharper, and then I go in, I look at every little strand at the end, but not necessarily every strand in the hair itself. But when we get to a certain point, you really want to make sure that the end hairs are represented very clearly. And there's this fun little thing that happens with all hairs. They kind of crisscross. And so I'll turn off my normal hairbrush, just go to a hard round brush and do this thing at the tips where the hair will kind of overlaps itself. It like the very tip always seems to touch itself. Like you can think of it sort of like split ends, but I would say that everybody's hair does this a little bit. Even if you don't have split ends, they just the hair will clump together and create kind of a point. And you see it all the time with anime. You see it with a lot of video games. This kind of point. It makes it very easy to create hair. Not all hair actually looks exactly like this, but it is a very easy way to create hair cards because it makes sense. You can just have a polygon around that and make that work, and the anisotropy works really nicely. But what I do is I'll use this as my hair card texture. I will duplicate it, lock it, fill it with white, And then this will be my alpha. So I've got my hair card texture here. Flatten that out. That can be hair. I usually would want to put red in the background rather than black. But for the alpha, I need black. So I'm going to make the alpha. And then here, this would be the color where the red is not is the background color for the hair. So this hair card actually will work. We can delete all these, and then we can turn it into a targa, and it will work if as long as I put the alpha channel black and white texture in the alpha channel. Now this hair card should work pretty well. I just need to save it as a hair card. So this isn't actually what I was gonna do with, make sure it's 32 bits so it has the alpha. I'm not gonna do that with this model. What I was wanting to show was how to do sculpted hair where there's not necessarily as much lucency, or it's more of like a stylized hair, and you're not really seeing every little strand come off, but we can get a great look out of this even so. And then you can do a mix and match where you have a model base and then putting some kind of hair cards to kind of add some transparency here and there. That works pretty well. But here we can add some highlights to this, very similar to how I was doing the hair card highlights, just here and there, just to get that feeling. Make sure that the stroke has a roll modifier on it. This roll distance under modifiers, this is stroke modifiers, roll distance. You crank that up, you get less dotting, and we can kind of brighten this up, middle intensity, and then as long as we have enough vertices, you can get the a really interesting highlight texture. Looks like some kind of stair stepping happened there, a little bit on the model, a little bit in the texture. So if we shift smooth it, I'm going to turn on add just a little smooth, just gently smooth. It'll fix some of that up. But yeah, just getting a little bit of a highlight in there, a little bit of a flow. And then it's all about the concept art. What was the hair looking like in the concept art? We want to make sure we kind of keep to that, because otherwise we could just kind of go any old direction and get lost in the weeds trying to figure out how this should look. But what I like to do is a little bit of a highlight. There are some kind of dodge tools in ZBrush, but I find if you get your colors right, you can do most of it just straight color, like you're painting directly onto a model. So we can get a little bit of that, little highlight down here, just a hair, and then get some striation, some strands. Notice I'm not thinking about every hair. It just looks a little noisy if I do. And then we just need the model to be high res enough that we don't get this thing where you see the polygon. So I'll divide it again and get a little more striation. Let's see, a little more darkness on this side. It's darker. And then what I want to show next is how to kind of bring both the hair and the face into Maya and make the lod0 of it. So now a lot of things might not need as much attention as a face, and hair does need a lot of attention. It's amazing how much attention hair needs, because if it doesn't look right, it ruins the whole character. So hair does take a while to get the feel right, but essentially it's the lod0 needs to be created a certain way. So let's bring this into Maya. I'm going to show how to create the lod0 with quad draw. We'll start with the face, the concentric circles and everything. Let's see, extra stroke in there. It doesn't really matter what underneath the hair looks like, but I like to have some sort of filler so it's not just skin, because otherwise sometimes the skin comes out and it's a little weird. So I usually kind of fill it just in a little bit of blending. Not really ever going to see this, so it's not a big deal if there's not too much attention paid to it. But now I've got this model. I want to bring it into Maya, but I probably don't want to bring the high res in. Always nice to have a lower resolution model. If you don't have divisions in your model and you want to bring it into Maya and your model is really high resolution, you can decimate it with the Z plugin Decimation Master. You would just pre-process current, which is this model, whatever you have selected, and then decimate it to like 20K, and it'll give you a model that will be workable in Maya. But here I'm going to use this lower division because it still looks pretty high res, and we can export this as my face high. We'll also export the hair. If it has divisions, we'll get kind of medium level. We don't want to go too low because then we lose any information. And this low res is not ever going to be seen again. So I need to make sure that I have a high enough resolution that I can grab the details. So just above the super low resolution, mid resolution usually works pretty well for creating the lod0. And then this is the sorry, this wouldn't be the high res, this would be the medium res. Medium res hair and medium res face. And then I should also export out the high res if I was going to bake it in Substance Painter. We'll export out the hair as high res as well and export out the face as high res. And I do want to make sure that it exports with the poly paint applied because we can extract that in Substance Painter. Let's export out the hair high. Okay, I don't know if is this the hair? Is it the head or the hair that I've got here? Head. Okay, export out the head high. So I'm not going to bring this, the high res into Maya, but we will use it to bake in Substance Painter. Okay, so now we come into Maya, I'll make a new scene, and I want to import my medium res. So the face medium res. Here it is. You can see the polygon, so it should run pretty smoothly. If you're finding that it's a little slow selecting and using quad draw, then I would reduce the polys because it should be all pretty streamlined. We can also bring in the hair, but I will put it on a separate layer so that we use it. So we're not seeing all the polys at the same time. That can cause issues as well. So we'll create a hair medium res layer. And a face medium res. I love to use layers because it is going to be easy to turn on and off. I feel any other system, extra piece here, that's probably because the hair had multiple, yeah, the hair probably had multiple polygroups. It's still a little futzy with exporting models when they have multiple polygroups. Let's see, let's grab the hair. Well, looks like one here, but I'm sure there's another one in there somewhere. So Control W turns it all into one polygroup. Doesn't actually affect the vertex color, but it does affect the polygroups. We'll export out the hair med. There's mid or medium. I guess I don't know. Two different words, but they're both meaning the same thing. Okay, so now when I import that hair, hopefully it won't be multiple pieces. Oh, I probably exported it at too high resolution. Bring it down a little bit and try it again. Pyramid. Okay, so this is great, but it's too high, and you notice I could tell right away because when I was importing it, everything slowed down. It's just too high. So we'll delete it. We'll import the medium res. And this one, there we go. That looks pretty good. Everything's running really smooth. We'll go to the layers and make sure hair mid is set up there. Turn it off. And now I just want to create the lod0 of the head. We'll run through that pretty quickly. And then I want to show how we create the lod0 of the hair. And then we will UV these things and bake them. So first off, select the model and make it a live object, so it turns dark green when we go into wireframe. Now we should be able to turn quad draw on and click anywhere in the model, and it lands on the surface exactly. And yeah, this is very similar to how we were working on the helmet, but the face is more complicated. The other thing you might notice, you zoom in, and it's okay if there's a little stair stepping as long as you have the main details. But you zoom in, the distortion's a little funny. Everything's really fisheyed. The other thing you might notice in some models is you zoom in too much and it disappears, starts cutting out. That's because of the clipping plane. So that can be fixed in the camera attribute editor. Mine seems to be fine, but the other thing I might want to do is zoom in a little so that it doesn't get so distorted when I start to focus in. That's another thing about faces and cameras is if they're really wide, you get close, faces look very, very different. You can see those ears are disappearing. Everything feels, the nose is huge, but we zoom in and the nose looks a lot smaller and you can see the ears a lot more. So you have to find that kind of nice mid ground. Usually 35 is pretty good for faces because it doesn't distort them too much. It looks pretty good at this distance. So now we've got a live object face. I'm going to set up a quad draw, and you can bring in models. Like say if you had certain things in this model that maybe you wanted to start with like a cylinder, you can bring in a model and use that in quad draw. I'm just going to get rid of anything that is not going to be useful. Or you can just start drawing directly with the polygons because quad draw works both ways. You can use a model and move things around with the model, or you can just click on the model with these dots and hold down Shift. And if you notice, it highlights, creates that model or that polygon when I hold down Shift and click in between. But what I'm going to do, I will just go ahead and use quad draw. I'm going to turn on symmetry so I know what the center line will be. And then I'm going to create a concentric circle around the mouth. And it should line up with a concentric circle that in the corner of the lips as well. So let's see. This one gets a little tricky because the corners of the mouth get really, really tight. But if you draw, and we might start out a little simpler, too many verts can cause everything to kind of slow down workflow wise. What I like to do is start with very simple amount of verts and then add more later. So this way you can see it's really, really simple. That way I can quickly start creating a concentric circle that goes to the corners of the mouth, and then I will eventually change it to be something that has more depth here. But first off, we make this all really simple. And this is the trick with lod0ing. Whether you're doing a car or a face, you want to start really, really simple. And then, see, this won't work because then I don't have a concentric circle wrapping around. What I want to do is kind of make sure that there is a wrap around here, a little corner there, and then something like that. So this is without a whole lot of work or polys. We've got something like this. Watch out, don't have them snap in like this. You still want this concentric circle around. I might end up adding more polys later, but right now this simplicity will be very helpful. So you start something like this, get the really simple concentric circle going around the mouth like that. Then maybe think about exactly where the corners of the mouth are so that that dimple where the whole cavity is correct. And then the other thing that's important with mouths is that you do need to line up the top and the bottom. Otherwise, they won't close easily, or they look kind of funky when they close. So I usually try to make sure that the top and the bottom verts line up. So this is kind of basically how you get started. And then as soon as I'm happy with it, I'll start adding more concentric circles to get the kind of the volume of the lips. But this beginning is the best way to work. It's just simple. Keep it really low poly. It's almost like the low lod0, because at some point you might need a low lod0 for efficiency, and you don't want to make something that can't go low. So I usually start with a really low res concentric circle, and then when I'm kind of getting everything in happy just right, I will do the edge loop. And you can see how quickly we can add details once we get the edge loops. But you notice, there's a whole bunch of edges here that look really low res and polygonal at the moment, but this is the kind of speediest way to build the whole face, because now it's going to be easier to lock it into the eyes, and I'm going to think about the edge flow in a very simplistic way rather than overcomplicating it too early. So we'll get one around the mouth, so I can kind of trust the mouth and know that there's big concentric circle going all the way around the mouth, pulling all the way down a little bit on the outside of the mouth, and then it kind of wraps around the chin like this, maybe a little further out this way. And once we're happy, we'll start adding more, but I want to keep everything simple in the beginning. Do the same for the eyes. Very important to go around the tear duct area too. Just clicking, creating 2 or 4 verts at once, but you really do want to pay attention to the kind of resting corners of the eyelids. There's this lower res model, which we won't use in the end. You can see how funky it gets when the low res doesn't match the crispness of a lid. But this form will work fine. The high res is absolutely crisp as hell around the edges of these corners of these eyes, but this medium res might not really show it. So that's why we're creating the lod0s, because I need that crispness to go around the lid and the corners of the lid and the creases of the lid, because otherwise we'll get this kind of funky, ugly normal edge that ends up being too low resolution to deal with. So get to the corners of the eyes. We got to make that kind of sharp turn. Even if you have crow's feet, long kind of angles that flow towards the back of the head there, you still want to do this whole thing where you're wrapping around the lid like this. Otherwise, you lose the ability to open and close cleanly. And then there's also other issues with UVing. So concentric circle going all the way around, keeping it kind of simple in the beginning. I'll probably leave the bottom really simple, so when I build up to the face, things end up connecting easily. And then we need concentric circles that are much bigger here. So This one should go even above the brow, but eventually I do want one right there along the brow, especially the crisp edge of a brow, really important. This brow is actually separate geo. Sometimes you want to completely separate it. Sometimes you want to bake it in. All depends on the style of the game. But the first thing I usually do is just make these big concentric circles to get everything moving closely. And you notice sometimes it doesn't want to create the poly if the vert's too far away. So sometimes I create the vert a little closer, make the poly, and pull it out. And then this corner edge usually probably needs an extra edge eventually. And then this lower edge, I'll bring it out real low so that that concentric circle really stretches out, and then we'll add divisions when we're happy with the flow. The again, it's all about the muscle flow, this kind of the stretch and the compression. So when doing concentric circles around the eyes, try to think about the ways in which the muscles pull and the tension exist, and it will help you kind of visualize why we're doing it this way. And one more here, right there and there. And then, yeah, I'll pull it out. Once you make it, pretty easy to add divisions, but I won't add them until I get everything in place, because there might be some sort of mistake I made, something not quite lining up with the flow. So I got what I got. Oh, the head there dropped. I got the got to get the flow all worked out here. Okay, so we usually do something around the nose because it is an extrusion. It needs a little bit of a concentric circle, and then the nostrils themselves are an extrusion inward, so we kind of need to deal with them also as a concentric circle, but with as few polys as we can manage, because otherwise there's just a lot of polys in the nose. So I try to do a little concentric kind of situation with the nose, but it's not quite as important as the lips and the eyes, and you can always get away with having less polys in the nose than the eyes. This didn't quite make a concentric circle and didn't go all the way around, so let's make sure we get a sharp turn here. And then add one more here, there, and this should all kind of line up nicely. But yeah, just like I was showing with the kind of box modeling, the concentric circles do really make it easy to manage anything like an extrusion or a hole. Maybe, let's see, what is it? This, I want to make sure we have enough volume polys around the nostril so it doesn't get too blocky, and then do a this one a little high to start, but let's see, let's put that there. Yeah, at a certain point, the concentric circles kind of stop mattering. Just want enough verts here to not be ugly. And then we'll try to look at how they would function with the lips here. So here we've got kind of the blocked in nose. This is a good start. There's going to be need to be kind of a concentric circle situation around the ears. Usually a lot more polys right around here, so you can work with the divot around the ear. And then what I do is I just kind of outline the ear area. It's going to make it a lot easier to manage and deal with UVs. And then we can do concentric circles to get it started, and then the inside will be more complicated, but I like to start simply by outlining the peaks. So the main peak in the ear is the ridge lobe that kind of going around the edge, and it swoops in, creates this kind of golden spiral, pulls back in. Yeah, how about that storm? Wasn't that a golden spiral in the cyclone? It was totally a golden spiral going over the Pacific Ocean. I always find it interesting when it shows up in weather because it's like you'll see it in shells and in flowers and stuff, but having a concentric or not a concentric circle, a golden spiral storm is so northwest. We're just a very artsy place. See, I'm gonna get this one edge to go right up to the corner of the ear. And yeah, did anybody see the storm from space? It looked pretty cool. It was what was it, the cyclone 2024. It was just a really beautiful golden spiral. Looked like the Nightmare Before Christmas cover. Just really interesting how lovely that is. The hurricanes kind of do that too, but it was a little sharper of a turn in the center, so I did find that pretty interesting. Okay, so getting back, I want this edge of the ears to be represented with enough polys because otherwise they look really chunky. So I start just drawing enough polys around the ridge. And then making sure there's a thickness to the ridge and continue that all the way through. And then the lobe ends up being a tricky area where you kind of have to decide if you're going to swoop up or terminate it. Sometimes just triangulating it ends up looking fine, but I'm going to wrap this around so that the entire thing is a concentric circle. All right, still good. Okay. Um, okay, so yeah, the ear definitely takes a little while. What you'll find is if you get the concentric circle system working, then it's really quick to add all the details in there. Um, right in the middle, but it is one of the most annoying complexities is the ear. Just how incredibly complex it is compared to everything else in the body. Just like the face concentric circles, bodies do need concentric circles around the shoulders, around the legs, around the elbows, around the wrists, and around the fingers and the joints of the fingers. So it's just kind of everywhere in modeling, concentric circles work better. It will be something that I will continue to repeat while we're working on the lod0. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of how important it is to me and to modeling in general. So here you can see it's, not necessarily totally clean round, but eventually I will probably add some extra spans in there to round this out. But I don't want to get too many before I understand the interior. So let's leave some of those out. And then as we come into this side, I will start to break some things up. In the inside of the ear, definitely don't want to think about concentric circles too much because it just ends up, you go crazy. But I try to get some around the little divot here and giving the lobe a little bit of an edge because we will want to add just a little bit of form to ears. Ears they used to just kind of make them pretty flat, but they always looked funky. They looked kind of cardboard. So really important to give a little definition to the ears. Yeah, sometimes you can just hold down tab, but I always find just clicking, creating a vert does work a little better. As it rolls around, you want enough edge to um, not be too chiseled here. So eventually I will add this extra edge here and an extra edge on the inside. And then now getting up here, we could probably make a triangle or two because I don't need as many polys here as I do. Um, yeah, this can kind of flow into nothing as long as there's a concentric circle around the extrusion of the ear. Then the interior we can kind of start to simplify. As long as I have the roundness around the outside, the interior can be mostly simpler, a lot less to think about. Try to see, let's just kind of flatten it out here, maybe add one around this divot so that the divot is represented, not need a little bit more here so that divot is represented, and then get real tight around the divot. Otherwise it can be a little funky. And then now I can start to flatten out certain stuff like this. We can bring it in, but I don't, a lot of this stuff ends up being represented very nicely with um, just the normal map will take care of a lot of this information. We don't really need even the dark area to be too defined. Just want to kind of get as much information as you can without going crazy. And I guess that's the real trick, is to not lose your mind doing this. And yeah, pull this in here probably. Oh, I see what's going on here. Okay, right there. And then this edge can snap and we'll just fill that one in there. So yeah, a little more for the divot here, but you notice I stopped caring about concentric circles at a certain point, and we just need it to just have just enough polys to fill in this area. So now, let's see, let's add a couple more here. And start to triangulate some of this stuff. Let's see, one more here. And then, yeah, one more here. Maybe just a little more information there, and snap that, and almost there, right about there. And yeah, this one can just triangulate like that. Want to do, usually it's better to do triangles rather than a concave poly. So I'll kind of leave it at something like that. But that should work for the ear. We just need the back area and one concentric circle around the extrusion edge. Maybe not that tight, but right around there. So now I might end up adding more here later. But I want to make sure we have the head worked out first. So we're getting, we're doing pretty good on time. The main thing is how to connect the nose to the face. One more little edge here, and we can even add an edge here. Let's do this, and right there could be a triangle. That should be fine. Edge. This one here. Good snap, and everything's pretty clean as it is. The interior of the nostril, because I did make it a concentric circle, there's is pretty easy way that I can fill this rather than kind of modeling inside the nose. We can just extrude it in, and that's another lovely thing about concentric circles. We can just kind of pull them up into the nose, and that ends up working out pretty well. So you can see because of the extrusion of the concentric circles, everything kind of flowed really cleanly. This tip of the nose might need more polys. It's looking all right. Actually, should be fine because I made it dense enough. And then as we move up to the eye, I like to kind of flatten out the center, and then I'll make sure that there's kind of some polygons around the edge of the nose. This is really important because things like this has a chisel on it. That nose is very chiseled. So I want to make sure that the chisel is represented, and you can even start with a really simple shape like that, and then just add the details, make sure the chisels have a line going along it. Now we got the middle of the brow. Sometimes this area is a little tricky because you want a little more information here, but you also want it to go up. So sometimes you can have extra info on the nose going up like that, and then you don't want to have any parts of the polygons that are a little too big, too long. Square gridded is always going to work better, but remember we have to figure out edge flow before we get it gridded. So what I like to do is make sure I'm locking them into place. Now, as we go up to the forehead, we can start to think about how it's going to go into the actual skull. So this would be a time where I could just make some really simple shapes up here. The skull's very, very simple compared to the mouth and the nose and everything. So I can just start with some really, really simple shapes. And as I come up, I will begin to think about how I should add more information to match the eye to this. So I'll probably bring this up and then add info from into this area once I get the eye up. So start really simply, and that means that is going to make it easy to match the brow to the skull shape. So let's see, let's bring this whole edge up like that. Make sure it's snapped, and we can do it again. So now as I bring it up here, I'm going to know where these edges need more information, but it's really easy to add information. So why don't I just kind of drag this all the way back like that, and then adding information should just kind of fill the roundness of the skull. I'm holding down Control with Quad Draw, and I'm inserting these edge loops by holding down Control. And that way I don't have to think about every single polygon, just thinking about the big, broad shapes. And then as we get to the ear, figure out where that locks in. As we get to the face, figure out how to plug the face into that. Let's go all the way. Let's see, yeah, the center line got a little messed up here. I don't know when or why, but sometimes that happens in Maya. Rather annoying that it can't handle symmetry. So I'm going to just delete everything that didn't line up. And at a certain point, sometimes, well, let's turn off symmetry. At a certain point, yeah, if you don't have a good center line, which is probably the first thing I should have done for this head cap, I'll do that because it's so easy to add it and subtract it. If I have a good center line, symmetry works much better than if I just try to wing it. So center line first. You can see every time I'm not in the center, there's 2, but if I'm in the center, it's 1. And then that way my center line will be clean. So that is something that is important with any symmetrical model, car, human, animal. The center line is you want if it's going to be mirrored or in any type of way, even if it's not completely symmetrical, the center line is really helpful for creating this whole system. So let's drag this all the way down. Just make sure that that center line is in the center. Somewhere in the extrusion, the center line got distorted, so something to keep in mind. There we go. So now it's centered. All I have to do is add Control to add info, and then here, this one will add this extra poly on this side. You usually want to like kind of crest over the temple. That's really helpful. And then see, and then as you go down to the neck absolutely is another concentric circle. One that, whoops, yeah, just not happy about that. So, of course, I should have saved. Oh, good, didn't lose it. So let's save now. Always scary when that happens. E class keen. Okay, so concentric circle around the neck, very important. So we'll start with the center line going down the chin, making sure that we just have something to start with that goes all the way down the head centered. And then now I can kind of create a concentric circle around the neck, get that started, and then this will really be important for animation. See, neck, arms, shoulders. You know, it seems like center concentric circle around the shoulders is would be really difficult, but you got to do it. It makes the animation work so much better. And it's like wrapping these circles around everything. Just takes a little bit of thought, and then it saves you a lot of headache in the future. So here we are, almost there. This one could probably use one more there and one more there. But there we are, kind of wrapping around. Shift relaxes them, but usually I only use shift once I've got the gridded areas kind of worked out. Here we've, going to drop down the um, uh, from the lips and then get to the neck here. Nice to have as much of a concentric kind of system as you can, but right around the jaw, there's always some issues. So I usually end up with some sort of a star, or we call it a star when there's five edges instead of four, which would be something like adding an extra poly going this way, and then this is what we call a star because there's five instead of four. The cross is more beneficial and easier to manage. So getting all of them in there, getting the details, making sure we are matching, one to one. As the ear goes back, want to think about it simple and gridded and not too clumpy in certain areas. So some of these things will triangulate. You want the concentric circle on some level, but at a certain point it will triangulate and the concentric circle kind of disappears just in case there's not enough polys here to match this. There could be, so we'll leave it until we bring this back. But let's start bringing down the cheek, which kind of goes, this part of the cheek will just kind of drop straight down so that there's enough polys here flowing, making the mouth flow back towards the creases of the smile. Going to add enough polys so the neck is not too chunky. And then we could start really simply as always, and somewhere around here there will be a star to just the shape language around the chin. Usually you can't really work it out all out with perfect concentric quads, so I usually do something like this. And then let's see, one more here would help, and then let's get an extra poly in here, extra one in here, and then there, there and there. And now, if there's enough polys, we can hold shift and kind of smooth some areas together. This will mean extra poly. That looks good. And then now I'm starting to match the eyes to the corners of the mouth. I probably can add a volume now that I've already started to think about all this area. We can just kind of create the extra concentric circles around the corners of the lip. That helps with volume. We've got this chin here, needs roundness, shouldn't be too chunky. So I am kind of adding enough polys so that we have a round chin. And then as we go back, not all of these polys are worthwhile. Sometimes you end up with a triangle here and there. So let's see. Let's try to get it as quadrated as possible, but as so it happens every now and then. We just have too many edges where we need something rounded, and we don't need as much in kind of the flatter areas. But let's see. We'll work that out at a certain point. Maybe one more there, and kind of one triangle here. Not the end of the world. Now here, and there's usually a star somewhere around the cheek here, but now I can kind of start wrapping these the flow up to the eye. This just generally helps with the flow, the muscle flow, and will help kind of with the overall poly flow. So here, there, I'm gonna need extra edge around here, and should be fine. Just kind of relax it. Then right there and here, it looks like kind of, might end up needing an extra edge here. An extra edge here doesn't hurt the nose, and it helps the lips. So we don't want the lips to be too stair-steppy around these edges, especially around the philtrum. There should be a fair amount of polys around the philtrum. And then kind of gridding them out. This area, let's see, what do we need? There and there. And then here we bring this down. We start to realize that the nose has more polys than really maybe the cheek needs, but we can add one or two more. But yeah, some point there will be kind of an issue, a triangulation issue around these spots. So let's see, let's lock that in there. This one, I usually maybe like to have it come up more in the smile crease rather than heading directly into the nostril. So this one I might delete because I feel like I need it to flow up a little more so it matches the muscle flow. It should pull towards the cheekbone, and there's like a crease, a smile crease right around here if you're smiling. So if it goes right into the nostril, we're going to lose the ability to kind of create that crease. So I'm going to, let's see, break this area here. We're going to have some point, it'll be a triangle. See around there. Yeah, at some point the triangles might show up. Trying to avoid it as much as possible, but it does rear its head from time to time. But you can see I'm trying to pull this up so it creates more of that smile crease. Now this lower part can still match here, but we have an extra edge that we didn't have before, and that's all a part of the process. Just getting the flow to line up correctly. Now it's going to flow into the nose, above the nostril, into the bridge of the nose, and that's going to lead a better result for animation. Here we are moving it up. We might not need as much at the bridge of the nose as we do in the cheek because of the smiling area does need a fair amount of polys so that you don't end up losing info when you're smiling. See, this star probably is going to cause some problems, so I'm going to use multi-cut and draw it up into the nose and right around here. No problem having a triangle there, but this area could cause some issues with triangulation. So let's see if I can fix that. There's a triangle here and a triangle here, and what we want to figure out is how we can essentially get rid of as many triangles at once, but sometimes sometimes it's a little tricky to kind of math it out. So now the triangle's over here and there's one here. So let's see, drag one there. Now this should be two quads, but that quad is kind of an awkward star. So let's start to just kind of adjust it so that it makes more sense. Yeah, that feels a little better. And now I can bring this crease, the smile crease, closer to the nostril area, which is kind of where it attaches. This should be better. Okay, so getting it all the way around, all the way through, takes some thought, takes some kind of mathing it out. It definitely takes some time. First time around is the trickiest. After you do it once, all of this makes so much more sense, as the case with learning is. But now bringing it all the way through, trying to make sure don't have too many polys where I don't need them, but do want a little more. Let's see. I like these. I don't really want to triangulate them too early. We could have just another edge here. So why don't I flip this instead of it attaching right there? We will, yeah, just bring this in a little bit. That one right there. Okay, that's better. Quad, quad, quad. And then this one will be, let's see, one more there. Let's see, one more here, 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 and here. There, 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 and there, and there, and there. And now we've got it all filled in. We got the cheek rounding. We'll probably want another edge here so the cheek doesn't get too crunchy. Now we just have to lock it into the ear. Make this really simple at first so I'm not confusing myself. You can see it's like, can even bring out these long stretches and then add the edges afterwards. There's probably going to be a star around here in the cheek, as I said. So right here is fine to have a 5-pointed star. There's not a lot of animation in that spot. And then, yeah, just got to bring it all the way back and match it. This is the reason why I'm not just using, here you can see we don't need this triangle. The reason why I'm not using Z remesher is because I just don't have the control that this gives me. And when you're working professionally and you're working with an animator, there is a demand for an incredible attention to detail so that you are not losing the mark. They really want everything to work seamlessly, and there is so much scrutiny over the polyflow of models. We usually do a research pass to make sure that everything is going right, and then it's about working with the animators and testing it, double checking to make sure that all of the edge loops are in the right place. I want it to be smooth, flowing, clean, and then people will be much happier with me. And so, yeah, all this is important. You can see I'm kind of starting to create density in areas that didn't have it before. All of this was a lot easier because I started simple and kind of brought everything together. Thinking about it as a whole rather than individually. With the eyes, just like the ears or the nostrils, they're kind of a whole. So sometimes I like to create a big old polygon in the middle. What do I use? A pen polygon is it's a mesh tool that you can create a really big flat polygon. It's going to have too many. I just hit delete if you make it the wrong edge, but I'm going all the way around this circumference of the concentric eye hole and clicking every poly. I don't want a hole in the eye hole because you'll see through the model. But if you go all the way around, click, I think it's counterclockwise, click everywhere until the pink is gone, and then hit Y. It'll be one single poly. rather than a bunch of polys. And this makes it easier to extrude inwards. And that's what you want to do for the inside of a lid. Extrude it in once, so you got a concentric circle. Extrude it in again. I just hit G to redo what I was doing. And then sometimes I'll turn off the live surface because it gets a little funky on the interiors. And you just end up pulling it in. You can flatten it out like this, but I find you got to get it back far enough and shrink it a little bit. And this, let's turn off the high res for a second. You can see this kind of goes straight back into the head. That's what I want. Let's go ahead and bring back the live surface head and then continue to quad draw. But now I've got a really clean inset. And that's usually what I do around holes, whether it's an eye hole, a nostril, or if you're doing an interior of a mouth, you would fill the interior of the mouth in and project it back, create this kind of cavity. Sometimes you do want it a little bigger so that you get the kind of the cavity to be big enough to hold the eyeball, but usually the eyeball is hiding most of that, so I don't worry about it. The interior of the eye, but the mouth does get bigger, so you can hold the teeth and all kinds of stuff. So you push that in and kind of make it bigger. But let's go on to finish this off. Really, really close. I'm not going to go all the way down just to save a little bit of time, but we will finish it off up to the ears and the skull. So let's see, just wrap this up here. Doing okay. And the last thing I want to do is show how to UV the head, which is very important to do nicely, because otherwise you get low res vertices or low res pixels. And as much as we're always trying to get the highest resolution on UVs, heads are tricky because you have so many areas that can distort in all kinds of funky ways. So what I try to make sure, see, you can see this, there's a triangle here and a triangle here. I could probably line them up if I thought about it a little more, just using multi-cut and then deleting certain edges here. Let's use Control Delete, make sure we're deleting them correctly, and then let's get rid of the high res for a second. That's why I like layers. Oh, and it didn't put it on the layer though, so let's make sure that's on a layer. Base mid. Okay, so hide it for a second so that I can fix. Oh yeah, I also still want the make live surface. So two things. Make sure it's there, and then make sure the make live surface is on, turns dark green. Now I can turn it off and it's still there, but it's off. So here we are, select the model, quad draw. Now we can see it a little clearly. Okay, so this triangle shouldn't be a triangle, should be a square. This shouldn't be a triangle, should be a square. This shouldn't be a triangle, should be a square. This is in the way. So now when I connect all these, there is no more triangles. Great. And that's what we want. It's always fun if we can kind of finish it off that way. I love to, at the end, hide the high res or the mid res altogether, because all I'm doing is connecting everything, but I still need it there, and I still need it to be make live because I am still creating on the surface of the model, even if I'm not really paying attention to it anymore. Here we are. There might be one star around here. See, that looks all right though. Oh, come on. Okay, here, we didn't need this extra edge around the neck there. So let's see, let's just delete that for now. Okay. Here and here, and then Yeah, this, we do need this. It's nice. Smooth this out a little bit. Sometimes my relax doesn't work great, and I will just kind of adjust it a bit. Here, this is looking ugly, so let's see how we can fix that. Probably okay to have one triangle at that corner, and now this will line up a little better. So yeah, just right here. There's always some spot that you got to fight with. This looks better that way. If you can seal it up, it's actually easier to mess with because then we can just kind of delete verts, and that worked great. Somehow we got rid of all the triangles. That's what we want. We want to get it as smooth and gridded as possible, but there are some areas that will be bigger polys than others. That's okay. As we get back here, we might not need as many polys. So here and there, I'll start to trim down the polys, especially underneath the hair. We don't need as many. And if you are trying to optimize for a game, sometimes we reduce the polys drastically underneath the hair. But as you can see, a lot of this can be done pretty quickly just by kind of being smart about how many polys come back here. So there, and then before I do that, let's add one more division here and one more division here because I still need the skull to be slightly round. There we are. Cool. And almost there. We're going to add the divisions for the forehead, but I don't, as you can see, there's a lot of divisions for the forehead here. I don't need quite as many here as I need in the forehead space. So often we will triangulate them just underneath the hairline. We want to go above the hairline and then make them disappear because at a certain point, you don't need extra polys for the skull. As long as it feels round, it's fine. But for all the details of the creases of the brow and how the brow can distort and all the expression that you want to get, that's very important to get enough polys in that area for that. Okay, so getting all the way around, I just want to get to this to a point where I can show the UV process, and then we'll move on. But almost there. You have a big old hole there, and it wasn't symmetrical. That's fine. We can fix the symmetry as soon as we are done with one side. That's why I was only working on one side, because otherwise you go crazy. Symmetry breaks often, and it's just better to just pay attention to one good side, and we can fix the other side later. Here we are, just kind of filling in everything. Let's see, it looks like we could probably use a few polys here and there in the back, but I'll fill it in simply first. Get it all the way to here, and then, yeah, this is okay that's triangulated. This concentric circle around the neck important, but as we get into the jaw, it's okay to have a triangle or a star. And then you just want to finish this off. You can see there's two triangles. We can switch that up so that if you don't need a triangle, better not to have one. Okay, this one still is a triangle, but we can maybe wrap it around here. Let's do this. Let's match that one. Yeah, there's an n-gon here. That's ugly. But you can kind of bring this over, and that ends up, yeah, right. Let's see. Any way we can get rid of there? Yeah, there we go. So now it's all quads. There's always some area that you got to deal with where it's not necessarily as quadded as you want it, but it's as long as it's not in a space that's causing animation issues, it's not a big deal. Okay, so just need to fill in this area, and that would be just adding the final kind of temple line here. Bringing this over. And we can fill this quickly and probably need a kind of a star here, right there, so that we can get enough for the roundness of the skull. Okay. As we come back, there are areas that we don't need as many polys. The back of the head here, and then let's just get this all the way through. What I like to do is I kind of end up with an area that might still feel problematic, but what you do is you just kind of slowly massage it until it is almost right there. Yeah, it's almost nothing. This definitely could, we don't need a whole lot of polys here, but I just want to make sure the flow is nice. So here and then there. So you can see that, the flow got really ugly here. Let's just delete some edges. And I hold down Control and Delete to make sure I delete it cleanly enough. And then now with multi-cut, I can kind of bring them down. There's always some triangulation in the back, just because of the way that the head works as a radial shape. So yeah, just bringing these triangles down. This one is ugly, so let's fix that. Okay, and then this doesn't look great either. Just a little massaging always needs to be done. And then, yeah, here we've got an end gone, but this one even could turn into a triangle right here. Okay, so this is the whole process of the head LOD. The a little bit of relaxing at the end, just trying to make sure that it's quadded. And then the final thing that I will do before I move on is I will probably add, so I would love to add an extra edge here. This is always a tricky area. It's really ugly. And I can see a few too many triangles coming together, so I want to add one extra edge loop here, but I don't want it going all the way to the back. So let's delete a poly and then do the adding an edge loop right there. And now, let's see, yeah, just got to match all these. So multi-cut, and then this one can just triangulate here. Okay, now just relaxing some of these. There's a few triangles here and there. We could spend a little time trying to like line up all of these or really clean them up, but this will work, especially because most of that is not visible because of the hair. Now, the last thing that I'll do is I will smooth the face so that I can make sure that the polys look good. Because this is very, very faceted, and I don't know how the normals are working. There could be some major issues with the normals, but let's do a soften edge. Looks mostly good. If there's any funkiness like this around the ear, we just need a little extra poly in those areas to solve them. It's working a little too hard. So add polys while still using your make live surface, do a little bit of smoothing. These kind of sharp turns around edges can be the trickiest. But yeah, any dark edge we try to avoid. So we get it to about there, and then we will want to just look at it without the wireframe on. Looks like that dark edge went away. I do want to triangulate this because the that's going to end up being really ugly if I bring it into any other program. So I like to flatten out the back of the eye, same with the back of the mouth, and just do a triangulate because I don't need more polys than I need. So mesh, mesh triangulate. Let's just make sure. Oh, that looks awful though. Okay, I don't want it like that. You can see there was some twisting in and out that happened. And sometimes, at this point, there's no more, right? I don't necessarily need the high res. I just need it to not be totally busted. You can see there's funky distortions somewhere around here. This thing's got a little messy. Should be a concentric circle, but this extra edge caused an issue. So let's see. First off, if I delete this edge, we could cause some issues because we might end up having like two edges or like like a hole in that polygon. So let's use a target weld, and target welds with vertices do a good job of kind of solving that. And then I can just get rid of this corner that seemed to be completely useless. Control delete gets rid of the verts as well. And then now you can see this one area, because of the way that I pulled it back while the live surface was on, got a little confused. So I want to unfold it. And there you go. So that's going to look a little better. And then now I can use multi-cut to kind of at least get it a little more triangulated. It does not need to be concentric on the inside. It just needs to not be a big n-gon. The inside really doesn't matter, other than you just don't want it to be big n-gon. So fixing up those, now we can do mesh, triangulate. That looks okay. I still wouldn't mind if there was some centered up and down. This will make the animators a lot happier. I usually, in the UV, break off the this part of the eye, because the interior of the eye doesn't need as many um, uh, uh, as much pixels as the exterior. But yeah, whoop, didn't want a division. Okay, so that looks pretty good. If anything, we might end up needing a little more polys around this area, but it should bake pretty nice and looks pretty great. Just want to delete half of it that's not working. When you delete or when you select half of it, just make sure that you are only selecting one half and the right half and all the way to the center line. And it looks like the center line's dead in center, but there's like one vert here that isn't. So I like to make sure it's snapped to the center of the grid. If it is, if your move settings, your move snap settings, retain component spacing is on, it won't kind of lock and snap and flatten. So I turn that off, hold down X, and now snap using the X arrow and snap flat. And now you can see this is no longer wiggly or zigzag, totally straight in the center. And that means I can, oops, grab something outside of the neck though. Yeah, now let's do it again. Don't want the inside of the mouth either. That will cause issues. So now snap it right to the center of the grid. And I was holding down X for that snap. So this should be good. And I often will like to UV the just one half anyway, because sometimes you don't want to UV both sides, but we could. So let's, there's a way to kind of easily UV both sides, but the thing that I want to do before I do that is break up the shells of the UV of this head. So let's give the UV a shell to begin with, and I do that with just a planar map so we can see it all in one shell. Now I want to break off the ear. The ear is absolutely not going to unfold nicely because of these sharp corners around the back. So what I'll usually do is kind of find the concentric circle that I made around the ear, double click on it, and then we can use the UV toolkit and cut. And as long as it did go all the way around, looks like that triangle caused a little bit of an issue. You just want to make sure that it's a whole shell that pops off. Now, if it's a whole shell, I can select the component UV shell and grab it and move it. And then with the eye, the interior of the eye, I usually break that off as well. So with that, we can select the interior edge, concentric edge of the eye, just kind of wrapping around. do cut, and then now I should be able to select the UV shell of the interior of the eye and not the exterior. Both of these need a UV. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to do some sort of UV to begin with, better with the eye to project it kind of flat like this, and then the unfold works a little better. It's definitely not going to be perfect just because of the shape, but that doesn't need a whole lot of pixels because it's interior. The ear, very important to understand the way that this back end here is like a different, should be a kind of a different UV shell as well, because if you try to unfold this, it'll stretch this back area quite a lot. So I usually cut out a little edge here. Um, not all the way around, but just in the back area. And then that way there's just one extra ugly little shell, but we could probably even stick that into the head UV rather than it being part of the ear. Let's see, let's go all the way to this part rather than right here. So there will be an ugly seam there. You just try to minimize the visibility of it. Having it wrap around the back is good. And then cut it, and now I can just move it. And then this will unfold very easily, and this will unfold very easily, and there's no issues with stretching there. There's a little bit on the interior that always kind of happens, but ends up baking pretty nicely. Okay, so now the main thing, the most challenging thing is the face itself. I like to break it up, and then I will do a UV. Let's break off the neck too. The concentric circles around the neck. We can just do another plein air map just to get it out of the way, and it unfolds automatically. But I'll probably go back to that, and because I need it to be a cylindrical wrapping all the way around. But you see, I'm not actually caring about the UVs yet. I just want them separated as shells, and then we'll deal with the UVs a little more intensely, figuring out seams and such. Okay, so next up is the face, but why don't we mirror it and then we can do the face and it'll all kind of work pretty easy from that way. So I'm gonna duplicate it and then negative scale. Now we have two models. Usually you would freeze transformations. Maya doesn't really care if you don't. It ends up working out still if you don't. But I usually freeze transformations, and then what you want is in your channels or scales just to make sure nothing's moved and every vert in the center is lined up on top of each other. Then we will combine them. And usually what I like to do is turn on the heads up display poly count. And then I select the verts so I know how many I have so I can watch this number go down, and I'll do a mesh merge at a very low threshold. Hopefully that's low enough, but if it's too high, I'll get certain kind of things snapping together. Looks like I was okay. It does look like there's one extra funky edge right there. Fix that. And now that it's symmetrical, we can turn on symmetry. Just move that over so that the nose doesn't look broken on the inside. But now, yeah, what I want to do is select the verts in the center, and it looks like they did merge, but just to reiterate how to make sure they're snapped, combine it together. Since I undid that one thing, I'll fix this. Turn symmetry off. Combine it together, and right now there are two verts on either side, and you want to select it all. Look at your poly count, go to mesh, was it edit mesh merge at a low threshold. Look at the option box, see that go down. Want to make sure nothing extra is merged, and then just double check to make sure your center line is totally um, merged. So it should be totally merged like that. Great. We will see a line going down the center until you select it and do mesh display soften edge. Now it looks great. Now the main thing to do is the face UV. So this is a trick I've learned many years in the industry. What works best, what is easiest to do a face that the texture map looks good, all the vertices or all the pixels are about the same same texel density. It's the cylindrical map, but you want to grab everything other than the neck, even maybe avoiding the this part of the neck. So I grab the neck, but I could totally grab this spot as well because of the way that it wraps around. I'd probably live without it, but anyway, you grab everything other than the neck and the eyes and the ears, and then we'll do a UV cylindrical map where it's dead center. You notice there's some major distortion on the top. Just kind of move this out of the way so I can move these out of the way. Major distortion on the top, but pretty easy to select that top area and just hit unfold and it fixes anything there. What you don't want to do is unfold the whole thing because there's a lot of clean UV that happens because of the projection mapping of the cylindrical projection mapping. Wraps around the cheeks just right, wraps around the lips just right, wraps around the chin just right, wraps around the forehead just right. But certain areas don't work out quite as well, like the nose has a little bit of stretching, and then the eyes, I find that the eyes themselves will need to be flattened because if you ever want to close your eyes, you do want those UVs to represent closed eyes rather than open eyes. So what I do is I select these kind of edge of the eye and we'll kind of flatten it a little bit, trying not to overlap too much these corners. Some of them I can maybe leave off. But yeah, try to flatten that a little bit, just so it's a little flatter and you can see the UVs around these areas get bigger. And then we're probably going to have to unfold that area. So I'll do Shift and select everything else around it. And then that way I'm not selecting the edges because I like the way they look. Flattened, and then we'll unfold, and it kind of just wraps around it. Usually does a pretty good job. And then, any areas up here sometimes need to be unfolded. The area around the nostrils also need to be unfolded. So try to get the nose to have as much information as possible without distorting anything else. So I might expand just the center area a little bit, just because that center area sometimes gets a little low res. But then I want to deselect the center area and unfold everything so that there's no stretching around those areas. The mouth, also important to kind of close it so that even the very, very corners of the mouth don't cause any issues. Some of these aren't lined up exactly. This is not going to work right here because I needed an extra edge loop. But since we still have a symmetry, we have good symmetry now, this should be easier to just add one more edge loop right there. Just going down the mouth, because these should match up so that they can close vert to vert. And then you can even get like the stickiness of lips coming together. Okay, so I did the cylindrical map. I kind of unfolded it. There might have been an area in the top that got a little funky, and that's because the seam was weird. So what I'm going to do is cut a seam right to the forehead area where the hair splits, and then we can unfold that. I will sew anything that shouldn't be yeah, this edge should be sewed right there, so we'll sew that, and then we can just do an unfold of the whole top of the head, and it usually does this little thing, splits it into two hemispheres. Looks like I didn't squish this area on one side, so I just want to squish this one UV. It always grabs the other eye, the inside of the eye, even though I don't want that. Squish it a little bit and then re-unfold these. So now I've got a pretty decent head. Always want to check it with checkerboard, but we're looking at most non-distortion except for underneath the chin. That brings me to the last point, which is the chin usually ends up being split right here. And yeah, just select the edge there to there, just underneath the area that's the most visible, and then cut it. Not like that. Cut the edge here. Cut, yeah. And then you can select the bottom of the chin and unfold it, and it unfolds much nicer. So this is usually the best solution for heads. We have very clean, symmetrical head that is going to look great. The ears look good. There's two pieces to the ears now, so I want to make sure that one is flipped. So it would be the left one or the right one is flipped. Let's make sure that one too. These should be flipped. See under transform, flip. So they're facing the right direction. And then the eyes here, they should be much smaller because they're not really that important. Usually the right one is flipped because that one is inverted, so that one should be flipped. And then the neck here, I could do a symmetric or cylindrical map of the neck, and then unfold it with the seam in the back, and that works out really, really well. So we got the head. Let's bring down the size of the neck, fit it in with the ear. The ears can all fit in there. Do want to double check the checkerboard to see if the spacing of the checkers is matching. Neck and the face feel pretty good. Ears feel pretty good. It's fine to have the ears a little higher. Does you don't want them lower, that's for sure. Definitely make sure they go right up to the edges, or not to the edges. Sorry, you definitely want to leave a little space in right up in the edges because if they overlap or if they're touching, it does cause problems. So I leave a little space around the entire edges. But now I've got a really clean UV for the head. Just got these eye parts. They can be shrunk pretty low and just stuck any old where. Now, if everything has come together nicely, we will export this out as the LOD for the head, and we can bake it in Substance Painter. And I just want to show how to bake it with the vertex color, and then we'll move on. This will be quick. So I'll export it out as an OBJ, call it head LOD0, and we will bake it with the high res with Substance Painter. And that'll be that. So yeah, just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of really great way of making head LODs. And that is not, I don't want my student one, I want my professional one because I do have one. Substance painter. I got two substance painters, and one of them is student, one of them is professional. This one should be it. Cool, there we are. And then, yeah, bring in that LOD0, make sure we have high enough res, definitely at least 2048. Going to find my head LOD0, import that in. Now I just want to make sure the normals look good. Top of the head isn't really, I don't care because there will be hair, but everywhere else I do want it to be feeling pretty smooth and non-polygonal, especially around the ears. There could be more polys around the ears. But let's go ahead and bake it and just take a look at what we got. Make sure we're 2048. Import our high res blue face high. And then make sure the frontal rear distance is good, not getting any red in the surfaces that we care about. And then kind of match the rear ray with that. Under ID, I'll shift it to vertex color so I can bake my vertex color into a map. And now when I bake this, we should get a normal map. It looks like did not get anything. So let me make sure the head high is exported correctly. Blue face high. Okay. That seemed to go pretty fast, but let's try it once more. There. Yeah, that took a little longer. Okay. Let's try that again. Bake it, because I wasn't seeing any normals show up. Oh, did I not add the, no, I did. Blue face high. Okay. Let's give it a shot. First, just see, I really need to see these normals come together. And yeah, somehow it's not doing it. Probably because my UVs are not in the 0 to 1 space. They are too low. So we will just shift them up. I can drag them by hand, but there is this nice tool that will move things very specific units. So let's move it up 1 unit. There, oh, still, I guess it would be up 0.5 units. Yeah. And then now when I export the head, it should work. The reason why it wasn't working was because the UVs were not in the 0 to 1 space, and Substance Painter is pretty intense about that. So we got to re-import the low res blue lod0. Now we should see the UV. It still should be in the right place. Maybe export again, lod0. And just make sure the high is exported, blue face high. All right, now let's do that one more time. Import the lod0. There we are, 0 to 1 space. Now we do bake mesh, find our blue face high, make sure 2048, go to material ID, make sure vertex color is on, check our rear distances, and then I'm going to do a test bake, see if it works. Looks like it's working. And if I'm happy with that, we'll do anti-aliasing. So at least super sampling 4x makes everything a little cleaner, better resolution overall. So now the interior of the eyes, remember, I didn't care about that much. You don't see them. But how we apply the vertex color here is we're going to create a new fill layer. And under base color, we're going to look for our project texture color map from mesh. You drag that over to base color. There we are. We've got our vertex color from ZBrush. Now just want to play around with the roughness values. And then we can even add all kinds of fun materials. There's like skin materials and stuff to add extra details. But this is the start. This is where we want to begin, with something with a very clean lod0, clean UVs.